Who here has been told that their field, their industry, their career is changing or dying? Raise your hand. Keep your hand up if you went ahead and did it anyway. Now keep your hand up if you ever wondered if you made the right choice. Okay, you can put your hands down now. At 21 years old, the physician that I admired throughout childhood called me. He heard that I was going into medicine. I was excited. He was going to give me his advice. He was going to energize me. He was going to give me his wisdom. That's not what I got. Lauren, don't go into medicine. It's dying. Insurance companies were taking over. The doctor-patient relationship was fading. Physicians were losing autonomy. The joy was being squeezed out of medicine. I felt the phone drift further and further from my ear. I couldn't wait for it to stop. I was angry, disappointed, in complete denial that any physician would tell someone going into medicine something like this. Maybe it was immaturity. Maybe it was stubbornness. But I refused to hear what he was saying. Start over, reverse course? It wasn't even an option in my mind. I had decided I was going into medicine 10 years earlier, and this was who I was. I still remember that phone call vividly. Every detail, every word. Because somewhere beneath the denial, a question was forming that I wouldn't fully understand until much later. But here's the thing about words that you refuse to hear. They stick anyway. There's a Japanese concept called ikigai, your reason for being. It's often drawn as 4 overlapping circles: what you love, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. Like every child, I cycled through what I wanted to be when I grew up: a paleontologist, an astronaut, a veterinarian. But medicine stuck. And I think that's because the dream was grounded in more than just imagination. It was grounded in experience. I knew medicine through the eyes of a child patient. My pediatrician's office, the routine well visits, the predictable rhythm of checkups. I can still smell the sterile scent of alcohol, Band-Aids, and wooden tongue depressors. And I can still see him tall, a little stocky, hands bigger than my stomach. He moves slowly, deliberately, like he had all the time in the world. And when he listened to my heart and my lungs, he breathed in and out in perfect synchrony with me. Being in his office felt like stepping into a Norman Rockwell painting. There was trust, a quiet authority. Someone was in charge, and everything would be okay. This wasn't the moment that I decided to go into medicine, although it did form in my mind what a physician was. And that image mattered, because I would need someone who would live up to it a few years later. I was 9 years old when I got sick. Something was wrong with my joints, and it was a mystery. I ended up in the children's hospital with other children who were far more sick than I was. My rheumatologist was similar to my pediatrician. He was calm, but he was playful and relatable. And I was terrified being around so many sick kids, not knowing what was happening. And he explained everything to me in a way that I could understand. And then, one day during an exam, he took my socks off, held them up, threw them at me, and said, "These are stinky." And I laughed. That's it. That's the moment. The physician who knew what was happening explained it to me, made me feel important. and related to me. I didn't announce it then, but that was the formative moment that made me want to be a physician and shaped my own goals. Somewhere in my 9-year-old mind, an image was forming of who I wanted to become. Sometime later in high school, I decided for sure I was going into medicine. I had in my mind what that meant, someone who listened and understood not just the patient, but disease, medicine, someone who had the answer. And from that point on, everything revolved around what needed to be done to get there. And then I was in. I did what was needed. I made it. I had achieved my ikigai. Or so I thought. I just needed to graduate and figure out what I wanted to be. In medical school, the focus was on attaining knowledge, memorizing facts, spitting them back out as fast as they were given to you. In class, on exams, on rounds on the wards. It wasn't about how to process information and make decisions. It was about having the answer when asked. Isn't that what our patients want? They want the answers. I created flashcards, thousands of them, memorizing patterns, mechanisms, diseases, and treatments. On rounds, when the physicians asked me, what's the diagnosis? I better know. I didn't say, I'm not sure, or let me find out and get back to you. You bounce your answer back as fast as it's given to you. The question was always, what do you know? Fast forward, I'm a practicing allergist, and I've built exactly the career that I wanted to have. I'm the person with the answers, finally, and I'm restless. On the side, when I wasn't in clinic, I was teaching medical students at my own medical school. And something happened in those moments that didn't happen in the clinic. I felt energized. I felt like myself. In clinic, I was answering the questions, and in the classroom, I was asking them. What else could this be? What would change your thinking? Why do you think that? The question I was answering on a regular basis in clinic was what? When it should have been why. Why does this happen? Why is this the best treatment? Why not something else? And it took working with medical students who were just learning to ask why instead of what, to help me change my focus and realize that it had been wrong all along. And I realized I wanted to teach more. I wanted to be immersed in the why and the how and not just the what. But change is terrifying when your identity is built on certainty. I asked colleagues, do you think I could go into medical education? They looked at me like I was completely irrational. Why would you leave clinical practice? You're established, you're successful, your patients love you, your colleagues refer to you, they admire you. I asked my mentors for advice. Some were cautiously supportive, and some were silent. And silence when you're looking for permission sounds like a no. I was waiting for someone to tell me that it was okay to change, to give me the answer. But here's what I realized. I had to stop asking, what should I do? And start asking myself, why not? So I was standing at the edge of a leap, leaving full-time clinical practice for full-time medical education. And I took it. And here's what nobody tells you about taking a leap. The landing is hard. The first 3 years I was in over my head. I had imposter syndrome like I had never had before. In clinical practice, I knew what I was doing. I was the expert. Patients came to me because I had the answers they couldn't find elsewhere. That identity That person with the answers had taken years to build, and suddenly I was a new person. The one who didn't know how things worked, the one asking basic questions during meetings, the one who felt like everyone else could see right through me. It shook everything: my ikigai, my self-identity, my sense of competence. Some days I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake, if everyone who had looked at me like I was being completely irrational was right all along. I wasn't just learning a new job, I was learning a completely different way of being in medicine. And that meant changing things too: habits, assumptions, ways of measuring my own worth that no longer applied. My institution believed in me before I believed in myself. They saw something I couldn't see yet. And slowly, I started to find my footing. And my patients, the ones I thought would feel abandoned when I left, they cheered me on. Some of them still keep in touch. Some of them come to the classroom. They weren't upset that I was leaving. They were proud of me, that I gave myself permission to. This was my identity. How could she call it a phase? But you know what? After I had kids, my energy for running, my time for running diminished, and there was grief in that, losing something that I loved. She was right. It was a phase. But now I understand that the meaning of that wasn't that I would give it up and lose it. She meant that it was a phase in my development, because everything we do, everything we experience makes us who we are now. I didn't lose running. Running is still a part of me. The discipline, the discovery that I could push myself further than I ever thought, the knowledge that I could set a goal and achieve it. People who reinvent themselves, they don't let go of the past. They allow the future not to be defined by it. We take the good and we bring it with us. We use the hard parts to make us stronger, and we discard everything else. The phases don't disappear. They become the foundation for what comes next. All those hard years, in there something shifted. The fuzzy image was beginning to become clear. Your ikigai can change. It morphs. It's actually a contribution of many ikigais, not just one. And we can have more than one passion, and they can intersect deeply or just peripherally. The allergist that I was didn't disappear when I became a medical educator. She evolved. The clinical skills, the patient relationships, the evidence-based thinking that my attendings had instilled in me, all of it came with me. I didn't abandon my old ikigai. I completed it. Now, when I work with my students, I'm reminded every single day that the question isn't just what, it's why and how and why not. Just a few months ago, one of my students taught herself to code using AI. She had no formal training. She just asked herself, why can't I? And that question stuck with me. I've recognized the gaps and the connections that need filling in medical education, and my student inspired me to figure out a solution. Like my student, I've begun using AI to code and develop programs and websites to help learners from grade school through postgraduate learn better and answer the questions to fill their own gaps. The most important question students answer are very simple: why and how. These are asked over and over throughout the platforms. Yes, what is essential, but it's the scaffolding. And we need to ask why and how to fill the scaffolding to make everything stronger. Now that I've gone through this transformation, found many of my ikigais, and come to understand what ikigai really is, something that changes with you, I've begun a new journey. I've always coached my students and my patients. That's part of who I was and who I've become. But now I'm moving into the next phase, life and career coaching, helping others find the right questions so they can find their ikigai too. I now share my stories, my reflections, offer coaching through my blog, and hope that by sharing my own stories, others can be inspired to take a leap, land hard, and share their journey as well. Remember the phone call, the one where I let the phone drift further and further from my ear? Yeah, that physician was right. Medicine was changing. It's been changing my entire career, and it's still changing now. But he was wrong about what that meant, because here's the truth. Everything is changing. Your industry, your career, your field, it's evolving right now. That's not a warning, it's just reality. The question isn't whether change is coming or whether we can stop it. The question is whether you'll give yourself permission to change along with it. So here's my question for you, and you don't have to answer it today. What would you do if you're trusted that your ikigai was allowed to change? What would you try? What would you explore? Who might you become? You don't need the answer, you just need the right question. My student didn't wait for permission to learn something new. She just asked, why can't I? And started. That's what permission actually looks like. Not waiting for someone to tell you that it's okay. Just asking the question and being brave enough to find out. So I'm giving you permission to question, to explore, to learn something completely new, to change directions, to say, I don't know yet, but I'm figuring it out. You don't need my permission, you don't need anyone's permission, but if it helps you to hear someone say it, you have permission to ask the questions, to not know the answers, to change. Because your ikigai is not a fixed point that you find and defend forever. It's alive. It's supposed to move, and so are you. Everything else, we'll figure it out. We all are.